Dear students, before starting this topic, I want to ask few things. Like, have you ever felt butterflies in your stomach, or uh, when you face a stage fright? Where did you had a sense of diarrhea in any kind of panic situation? So all these are very strange feelings, right? So these strange feelings are under the control of a system called as limbic system. So today we are going to learn this limbic system in detail. So limbic system is ancient kind of cortex where it is concerned with emotions and memory. The term limbic means it is a ring-like. So it is the border, it is formed by the structures which form a border between the hypothalamus and cerebrum. So we can say it is a border between the diencephalon and the telencephalon. The components of limbic system are from telencephalon partly and from the diencephalon. So here in this picture, this is a beautiful picture showing a dissected specimen showing the limbic system. So I am drawing an outline here. So that it is dissected deep to the lateral ventricle, where we can see this is the diencephalon and here is the telencephalon which forms the cerebral cortex. So the exact function of limbic system is still unknown, but we say that these strange emotions which affects our visceral organs. So the limbic system is otherwise called as visceral brain. Let's see the components of limbic system. Anatomically, the limbic system has got cortical and subcortical components. Cortical components are like telencephalon components, where here we said that the limbic system is an ancient cortex and archicortex. So the cortex usually has 6 layers. So if you see the neocortex, 90% of the brain is made up of neocortex, where the cortex consists of 6 layers. The cells are arranged in 6 layers. Whereas in the archicortex, the cells are arranged only in 3 layers. And there is one more kind of cortex which is called as juxtacortex. Juxtacortex, it is the transition between the neocortex and archicortex, where we see they are not exactly 3 or not exactly 6. So they are between 3 to 6 layers. So the cortical part of the limbic system is made up of mainly the archicortex and juxtacortex. So we can say it as like archicortex and paleocortex together forms allocortex. So archi and paleo are the older varieties of cortex, where we see the layers are 3 layers and 3 to 6 layers. And the neocortex we have got 6 layers. So talking about the components, cortical, which is derived from the telencephalon, are limbic lobe. The limbic lobe is an arch-shaped cortex or the medial surface of the cerebral hemisphere. So here we can see the cingulate gyrus, which is a part of limbic lobe. So to remember the components of limbic lobe, I'll say an abbreviation as CUP. C is for cingulate gyrus, U is for uncus, which I'll show you now, and P is for parahippocampal gyrus. So these 3 CUP are the components of limbic lobe, and the limbic lobe also consists of frontal, parietal and temporal lobes also. So here is the medial surface of the cerebrum showing the cingulate gyrus. So the next one, what we are seeing, this green shaded part is uncus, which we'll discuss again. This is parahippocampal gyrus. So parahippocampal gyrus is present on each side of the deep to which hippocampus is present. So it is present on each side in the base of the brain along the interpeduncular fossa. The orbitofrontal cortex perceives a smell involved in the formation of memories. So, if we smell certain things which we already smelt previously, you again memorize those incidents which are associated with that smell. So, that is because of orbitofrontal cortex. Orbitofrontal cortex is this yellow shaded part, and it forms the roof of the orbit. So it is called orbitofrontal cortex, present in the anterior part of the inferior surface of the brain. Next, about the pyriform lobe. Pyriform lobe mainly consists of cortical amygdala and anterior parahippocampal gyrus also. So parahippocampal gyrus, the anterior part, is considered as pyriform lobe. And more specifically, the human pyriform lobe is located between the insula and the temporal lobe. So what is insula? So here is a specimen where we separated the lips of the lateral sulcus to show the central lobe or insula. So the pyriform lobe, to say exactly, it is located between the insula, that is a deeper lobe, and the other cortical areas. So it is between the insula and the temporal lobe, and anteriorly and laterally to the amygdaloid body. So I will show you the amygdaloid body also. Next, about the hippocampus. Hippocampus is associated with the long-term memory. So here is a picture showing the connections of hippocampus. So this is the hippocampus, which is present on deep to the parahippocampal gyrus, called as hippocampus, associated with the long-term memory. Parahippocampal gyrus, which is a part of limbic lobe, provides the pathway for the communication between the cortical sensation areas and hippocampus. Cingulate gyrus is responsible for the perception of neuropathic pain and nociception. Nociception means pain sensation. And apart from that, cingulate gyrus is meant for the sense of satisfaction. Means when you have a good meal, you will have a sense of satisfaction at the end of the meal. That is because of this cingulate gyrus. And let's talk about the subcortical components, that is the telencephalon deeper part. The cortical means the periphery part and subcortical means the deeper components. So deeper components, the first one is the amygdala here. Amygdala here, is mainly responsible for the sexual behavior, fear, anxiety and responses. So here is the amygdala, where we can see the caudate nucleus. This is the lentiform nucleus. I am writing N for nucleus. Then this is the caudate nucleus, head, body and tail of caudate nucleus. And we can see here the tail of the caudate nucleus. This is the tail of caudate nucleus, which terminally terminates in the amygdala. And nucleus accumbens, it is associated with the pleasure, addiction and reward. So next, about the septal nuclei. Septal nuclei lies in front of lamina terminalis. So here is the lamina terminalis. This is the geno of the corpus callosum. This is the rostrum of the corpus callosum. Rostrum continues here, this thin thread-like structure here, which is forming the anterior boundary of the third ventricle. This is lamina terminalis. So the septal area is here, which is in front of lamina terminalis. Now the next component of subcortical component is the olfactory bulb. Olfactory bulb receives the olfactory input about the smells detected in the nasal cavity. So we can see here, this is the olfactory tract and it is ending up in a widened structure. This is the olfactory bulb. So these are the subcortical components. The components of the diencephalon, it includes the thalamus and hypothalamus. From the thalamus, specifically the anterior nuclei of the thalamus, which are present on the anterior end of the thalamus. Then dorsomedial nucleus. Here we can see the medial dorsal nucleus or dorsomedial nucleus present here in the medial side. So this forms the dorsomedial nucleus of thalamus. The next component of the diencephalon is the hypothalamus. So this part is the hypothalamus. This is the hypothalamus. In front of the hypothalamus, this is lamina terminalis and here is the septal area. So this is okay. Physiologically, this limbic system, it is subdivided into emotional control and visual spatial functions and memory. So we can subdivide into two varieties. Emotional control is by amygdala, septal nuclei, orbitofrontal cortex, and anterior insula and the anterior cingulate gyrus. All these are under the emotional control. Visual spatial functions and the memory by hippocampus, posterior parahippocampal cortex, and posterior part of the cingulate gyrus. So these are under the visual spatial functions and memory. So this is how physiologically we can divide. So if we see this limbic system, actually if we see, it is an ancient cortex we are saying. So it is quite developed in the lower animals, especially the entorhinal cortex. Means the part of the cortex which is perception for smell sensation. So this cortex is quite well developed in lower animals. So they are macrosmatic. Means the smell sensation plays an important role in their life, where they procure food by the smell sensation, and their sexual behavior is based on the smell sensation, and some peculiar smells make them alert to protect themselves for self-defense against the enemies. So all these are because of smell. So macrosmatic is the lower animals where their smell sensation is quite higher. But in we human beings, we are microsmatic, where the smell sensation is rudimentary. The emotions of humans doesn't depend completely on smell sensation. Actually, it is like visual sensation and what we hear by auditory and somebody's touch. All these are like plays a major role on the emotions of human beings. So we are microsmatic. Let's see the description of each component what we just saw it. So first about the limbic lobe. The limbic lobe comprises of cingulate gyrus, I already told, uncus and parahippocampal gyrus. Cup, I told you all, CUP. So first about the subcallosal gyrus. It is anterior to the lamina terminalis. So this is the lamina terminalis. Anterior to it is the septal area, and still more related to it is the subcallosal gyrus. And the anterior wall of the hippo, it is present anterior to the hypothalamus, and also to the anterior commissure. So here is the anterior commissure. This part is the anterior commissure. So in front of the anterior commissure it is present. Also it is an inferior to the rostrum. Rostrum means here. This is rostrum of corpus callosum. This is genu. This is body, and here is the splenium. This part is the splenium of corpus callosum. So here it is present subcallosal gyrus. I am writing G for gyrus, and posterior superior to the orbitofrontal cortex. So this part is the orbitofrontal cortex. So it is posterior superior to the orbitofrontal cortex of the cerebrum. This area, it corresponds with the sections of Brodmann areas 24, 32 and 25. So these are the areas associated with the subcallosal gyrus. It is believed to be involved in depression. So subcallosal gyrus plays an important role in depression of an individual. Next about the cingulate gyrus. It is a C-shaped structure. So we can divide it into four parts: prelimbic, infralimbic, anterior cingulate and retrosplenial cortex. The cingulate gyrus is separated from the corpus callosum by a sulcus called as callosal sulcus. So along the corpus callosum, if you draw a line about the corpus callosum, that is the callosal sulcus, which separates the cingulate gyrus from the corpus callosum. And from the medial frontal gyrus and paracentral lobule, it is separated by cingulate sulcus. So this sulcus is the It is believed that the cingulate gyrus is strongly associated with the perception of neuropathic pain, nociception, and also the sense of satisfaction. So one thing we have to note here, that neuropathic pain is the pain used by the damage or a disease affecting a somatosensory nervous system. So neuropathic pain may be associated with abnormal sensations like dysesthesia, means pain from normally or non-painful stimuli, which are called as allodynia. So non-painful stimuli are called non-painful stimuli. Allodynia, that is unpleasant or painful stimuli, are called as dysesthesia. Writing here. So these things, it may have continuous or episodic or paroxysmal components. So all these pain related are with the cingulate gyrus, and cingulate gyrus also for the sense of satisfaction. Next we shall continue with the parahippocampal gyrus. It is best viewed on the inferior surface of the temporal lobe of cerebrum. The area corresponds with the several Brodmann areas such as entorhinal cortex 27-28. Entorhinal is for smell sensation and smell memories. And 35, 36, 48, 49. 35, 36, 48, 49. These are also the Brodmann areas which are associated with the parahippocampal gyrus. Parahippocampal gyrus provides a pathway for the communication between the hippocampus and all cortical association areas, through which the afferent impulses enter the hippocampus. So it forms an afferent pathway to the hippocampus from the rest of the cortical areas. So that is the main function of parahippocampal gyrus. Orbitofrontal gyrus, it is the inferior surface of the frontal lobe, rests on the roof of the orbit, and it is present in the anterior cranial fossa. And this region of the cerebrum is known as orbitofrontal gyrus. The olfactory bulb and tract are seen. So you can see the olfactory tract and olfactory bulb on each side, present on the inferior surface of the orbitofrontal gyrus. So this olfactory tract and bulb, they are related to the straight gyrus. So medial to it is the gyrus rectus or straight gyrus of the orbitofrontal gyrus, forms a medial orbital gyrus. So here is the head-shaped sulcus. I am writing on other side too, head-shaped. This is anterior, posterior, medial and lateral frontoorbital gyrus. So the medial orbital gyrus and gyrus rectus plays a major part in the orbitofrontal cortex, and this part perceives the smell sensation, which is also involved in the formation of memories associated with the smell. Okay, now we saw the components of limbic system in detail, where they are present and how they are related to the telencephalon. All these things we discussed till now. Now let's continue with the connections. The first and foremost important connections associated with the limbic system is called as Pepys circuit or circle of Pepys. So the Pepys circuit, it consists of pyramidal cells of the hippocampus. So from the hippocampus, pyramidal cells of the hippocampus, the connections are to the fornix. So you can see here is the fornix. So this C-like structure going up is the fornix, and finally they relay in the mammillary body of the hypothalamus. So from the mammillary body of the hypothalamus, the connections are to the, here is the thalamus, and here is the anterior, the green colored part is the anterior nucleus of thalamus. We can see the connections from the mammillary body to the anterior nucleus of the thalamus, forming a mammillothalamic tract. So the tract between the mammillary body and the anterior nucleus of thalamus is mammillothalamic tract. And from the anterior nucleus of the thalamus, the fibers traverse through the anterior limb of the internal capsule. So from here it is written in all directions. This is through the anterior limb of internal capsule. And from the anterior limb of the internal capsule, it reaches to the higher neocortex, that is cingulate gyrus. And from the cingulate gyrus, it goes to the entorhinal cortex and cingulum, and finally back to the hippocampus. So cingulate gyrus from the cingulate gyrus to the entorhinal cortex, where the smell sensation can be perceived, and from the entorhinal cortex to the entorhinal cortex and cingulum, and from the cingulum back to the hippocampus. So this is called as circle of Pepys or Pepys circuit. So I'll just repeat again. It starts with the pyramidal cells of the hippocampus. From the pyramidal cells, the efferents are called as the fornix. So it forms a bundle of fibers called fornix, and fornix terminally it ends in the mammillary bodies of hypothalamus, and from the mammillary bodies via the mammillothalamic tract it reaches the anterior thalamic nuclei, and from there to the anterior limb of the internal capsule, and relay in the cingulate gyrus, then entorhinal cortex or cingulum, and finally back to the hippocampus. So it is called mammillothalamic cingulate tract. So this Pepys circuit is associated with recent memory. Means whatever we see, it makes a frame for some time. This recent memory has to be framed in our mind for a long-term memory. So the recent memory is processed to form long-term memory. So Pepys circuit is associated with the recent memory. Let's see the functions of limbic system. The quick way to remember the functions of limbic system, to think about 5 F's. F's for feeding or satiety or hunger, and forgetting, memory, and third F is the fighting, emotional response. Then family means sexual reproduction and marital instincts. And fifth one is fornicating. Fornicating means sexual arousal. So the sexual behavior is mainly under the control of limbic system. So all these F's makes you to remember the functions of limbic system. So with these functions, it is able to complete these activities through intricate connections with the other systems of the brain. So let's talk about the other connections and the components in detail. So starting with the anterior nucleus of thalamus, which forms a part of mammillothalamic tract, it is involved in the processing of memory. So remember, anterior nucleus of thalamus is for the processing of memory. And there are 3 subdivisions of the anterior part of the thalamus, that is the anteroventral, anteromedial, anterodorsal. So anterior nucleus itself is divided into anteroventral, anterodorsal and anteromedial. So these are the 3 components. These nuclei receive the information from so-called the limbic system of the brain, giving them important functions and influence upon emotional states and memory. So this system is the collection of structures derived from the main parts of the brain like telencephalon, diencephalon and mesencephalon. Next, dorsomedial nucleus of thalamus, which is also a component here. So dorsomedial nucleus is subdivided into 2 parts, anteromedial magnocellular and posterolateral parvocellular. So it is divided into anteromedial magnocellular part having larger cells in it, and posterolateral PL I am writing, posterolateral parvocellular. So these are the two components of the dorsomedial nucleus of thalamus, and this nucleus is responsible for integrating sensory, motor, visceral and olfactory information. So all the informations which we perceive, they are integrated at this level. So the visceral reactions, olfactory, smell and somatosensory and motor, all these are integrated and subsequently relating it to the individual's emotional state. So its overall function are similar to those of prefrontal cortex, and it receives afferents from the amygdala, and it has the reciprocal connections with the orbitofrontal and hypothalamus. So next nucleus is the nucleus accumbens. This nucleus accumbens is found in the rostral part of the forebrain, means the anterior part of the forebrain. Somewhere here it is present. It is present rostral. Rostral means the cranial part, anterior part of the forebrain. So where the head of the caudate nucleus and putamen meet. So you can see here, this is the head of the caudate nucleus and this is the putamen. That is the part of lentiform nucleus, they meet. Here is the nucleus accumbens. Nucleus accumbens and olfactory tubercle are paired structures and are the component of ventral striatum and component of input nuclei for the ventral tegmental area. So nucleus accumbens, it is a part of ventral striatum and also ventral tegmental. It is a component of input nuclei for the ventral tegmental area. I am writing VTA, ventral tegmental area. Nucleus accumbens and the olfactory tubercle together plays an important role in the reward circuit and are referred to the limbic motor interface. So when we perform any act which is rewarding, like example food, drugs, sex, anything. So dopaminergic neurons in the ventral tegmental area gets activated, and these neurons project into the nucleus accumbens and olfactory tubercle, and when they are activated, it results in the increase in the dopamine levels. So that is about the connections of nucleus accumbens. So here is the amygdala, which is also called as amygdaloid body. It is a small almond-like basal nucleus present deep beneath the parahippocampal gyrus. Within the temporal lobe it is present, and it lies superior to the inferior horn of lateral ventricle. So above to it, it forms the floor of inferior horn of the lateral ventricle, and it receives the signals from the hypothalamus, cerebral cortex and olfactory cortex. Relays emotions, reactions, especially of fear, aggression, anxiety, all these are under the control of amygdala, and especially the sexual behavior is under the control of amygdala. Recognition of emotional facial expressions involved in decision making, and it modulates the hypothalamic and endocrine activities. So these are the functions of amygdala. So the amygdala's connections, if we see, it is the window for the limbic system with major afferent connections to the olfactory bulb. So you can see here, it is having connections with the olfactory bulb, afferent and efferent also. Not only with the olfactory bulb and the piriform cortex, amygdala is having connections with the visual association areas. And it having connections with the auditory areas. So the major pathway of the amygdaloid nucleus is the stria terminalis. So the major pathway is the stria terminalis. So this is the stria terminalis, where we can see from the amygdala both efferent, and they end up in the septal nuclei, which terminates in the septal nuclei. This is the septal nuclei where stria terminalis terminates, and also in the hypothalamus. You can see the connections are going into the hypothalamus and to the septal nuclei from the stria terminalis. So these are the major connections of the amygdala. Bilateral lesions of the amygdala results in tranquility, means loss of fear, anger, aggression, and stimulation of amygdala produces aggressive emotional behaviors like fear, fighting, and sexual effects will be there. So all these are under the control of amygdala. There are three main parts in the hippocampal formation. One is the hippocampus, dentate gyrus, and subiculum. So first we shall start with the hippocampus. Hippocampus is a archicortex where it consists of 3 layers of cortex. Neocortex consists of 6 layers and archicortex or allocortex consists of 3 layers. And it is mainly having pyramidal cells. So the pyramidal cells form the efferent tract. So the efferents from the pyramidal cells, they project via the fornix. So this is the fornix which I encircled here. So we can see this blue colored structure which is winding round the thalamus is the fornix. So finally it relays in the septal area. So it relays in the septal area and it relays in the hypothalamus. So mammillary nuclei present in the hypothalamus. So that is about the hippocampus. Next is the dentate gyrus. Dentate gyrus means teeth-like. So when you see deep to the hippocampus, near to it, there is a dentate gyrus. It is also structurally considered as archicortex, where it consists of 3 layers of cortex. And as the grey matter is in 3 layers, the principal cells are the granule cells. So in the dentate gyrus, the principal cells are the granule cells that receives the major hippocampal input via the perforant pathway or entorhinal cortex and project into the pyramidal cells of the hippocampus and subiculum. So this is the subiculum. This pink colored one is the subiculum. And here is the dentate gyrus. And we can see it receives major pathway from the subiculum and the entorhinal cortex. So this one from the entorhinal cortex and from the subiculum and from the dentate gyrus back to the hippocampus. So all this. So next about the subiculum. Subiculum means it is like S-like. So here is the section of brain where it is the coronal section taken in this way. So at the level of thalamus, so these two are the thalami. And we can see the anterior horn of lateral ventricle. So on each side. So this part, if you notice here, which is enlarged. So this part. So this S-like thing. This complex contains the pyramidal neurons that project to the entorhinal cortex. So you can see here they are project to the entorhinal cortex and the other parts of the hippocampus. So from the subiculum it also goes to the other parts of the hippocampus. You can see here it is going into the fornix. So that is the main connections of the subiculum, and subiculum is well understood. Its functional properties are not well understood. It is still unclear, but believed that it plays a major role, but ill-defined role both in the spatial navigation and in the mnemonic processing. So I am very poor in making mnemonics, but subiculum is mainly under the control of making like spatial navigation and mnemonic processing. Next about the entorhinal cortex. Entorhinal cortex is the Brodmann area number 28. So this is the area number 28 and it is formed by the anterior part of the hippocampal gyrus and it is concerned with the memory and associative components. The major output of the entorhinal cortex to all parts of the hippocampal formation by perforant pathway. So it is called as perforant pathway. So the pathway here between the entorhinal cortex with the other part of the hippocampus is called as perforant pathway, which is a smaller component of projection fibers. In Alzheimer's disease, degeneration of the hippocampal formation and entorhinal cortex results in the leads to loss of cognitive function and memory. So there will be a loss of cognitive function and memory in Alzheimer's because the hippocampal formation undergoes degeneration. Next, about the hypothalamus. Hypothalamus is connected to the various parts of the limbic system. So hypothalamus is present here. Mainly the mammillary bodies of the hypothalamus are in connection with the limbic system. And its various parts of the limbic system regulates the various autonomic process, and we know the hypothalamus is the head ganglion of autonomic nervous system because all the autonomic functions are under the control of hypothalamus. So that is the reason they are concerned. So any emotions, you will have visceral functions like diarrhea when you are in a panic situation. All these visceral functions because the hypothalamus is stimulating all the autonomic pathways. So let's see the connections of hypothalamus. You can see it is connected to the brainstem and the spinal cord, both efferent and afferent. And hypothalamus is receiving all the afferents from the fornix. So the fornix is the major efferent pathway of the limbic system. So all the limbic structures from the hippocampus, from the entorhinal cortex, and from the amygdala to the septal nuclei and to the hypothalamus. So all these connections finally end up in the hypothalamus, especially the mammillary nuclei of hypothalamus. So the clinical correlation of limbic system condition is the temporal lobe epilepsy. Epilepsy means seizures. So here it is a chronic neurological condition and it is formed because of focal epilepsy and characterized by recurrent seizures. So that is about temporal lobe epilepsy. And next interesting syndrome here is Kluver-Bucy syndrome. Kluver-Bucy syndrome. Kluver-Bucy syndrome, it occurs due to bilateral ablation, means bilateral destruction of amygdala. So if amygdaloid body is destructed in both the cerebral hemispheres, it results in Kluver-Bucy syndrome. So characterized by not able to recognize the objects by sight. So there will be visual agnosia. So the person won't be able to recognize the objects by vision. So it is called visual agnosia, and tendency to examine objects excessively by mouth. The hyperorality means they will keep everything in the mouth and they will try to recognize the objects. So hyperorality increases, and compulsion to intensively explore the immediate environment like hypermetamorphosis. So they will be exploring the environment which is just next to them and no longer show fear or anger. So they won't have fear or anger even when in such a reaction is appropriate. So they will be very placid. So it is called placidity. So I will just write the symptoms here. Hyperorality. Then there will be no fear, no anger. So it is called placidity. And hypermetamorphosis. They eat excessively even when they are not hungry, or may eat objects that are not food. That is called hyperphagia. So these are the main symptoms of Kluver-Bucy syndrome: hyperorality, placidity, hypermetamorphosis, and hyperphagia. And augmentation in sexual behavior, they will become hypersexual also. So hypersexuality. So all these are the symptoms of Kluver-Bucy syndrome. Next is antegrade amnesia. If limbic system is affected, especially the hippocampus, we know that the hippocampus is transforming the short-term memory into a long-term memory. So therefore, insult to the hippocampus would impair this process, resulting in antegrade amnesia. So there will be loss of memory. As a result, the patient would recall past events prior to the insult, but not new memories after the injury has occurred. So the person will have memories before the injury. After the injury, the person won't remember anything. Next is amygdaloid lesions. The amygdala has been implicated in moderating emotions and behavior. and memory remains intact following lesions trauma to the amygdaloid complex, and individuals may demonstrate increased sex. Just now we discussed Clover-Bussy syndrome where there is ablation of amygdala. So similar symptoms may be there, but if it is unilateral, it may be of lesser impact. So there will be increase in hunger, increase in sex drive, and also there is increase in placidity where the person is emotionless, and they will be more hungry, so they eat all the time, and hyperphagia. All these symptoms are under the amygdaloid lesions. Next, akinetic mutism occurs due to the bilateral lesions of anterior part of the cingulate gyrus, and affected individuals are immobile, mute, and unresponsive. So they will be immobile, they will be like a mute, and there won't be any response. So this completes the little part of applied aspect, that is the clinical correlation to the limbic system. So this is a clinical correlation of limbic system. Today we learned about the anatomical components, physiological subdivisions of limbic system, and we have seen even the connections of limbic system. So all this would help you to understand what is limbic system. So try to read today to understand it better. Thank you.